This meeting is being recorded.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Today is January 18th. It is the monthly meeting of the Permanent Building Committee and School Building Committee. The first item on our agenda is the OPM selection discussion, which Denise, I think you were going to run through the presentation on that for us.
Sure thing. Yep.
All
Thanks, Rich. So for the next step in the middle school, high school building project kind of process. Oh, hold on, I'm going to share my screen or attempt to. Oh, take me back to the Zoom meeting. I could just put together a few slides to try to give a. Did I just kill it? Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
You still
Yes,
you
ma'am.
see it. Yep.
Oh, okay, that's good. Oh, here I are. Okay. Whoa. I don't use Zoom. I use Microsoft Teams. So that Chrome tab. Wow. Okay.
So Denise, you know you're muted.
All right. I'm not sure how I
Yay.
muted myself, but hopefully you can see the screen and hear me. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So thanks to the MSBA, they give us lots and lots and lots and lots of detail and guidance and templates and direction on exactly what to do in the process. So where we are right now is the selection of the owner's project manager, which will, this point forward, be called the OPM, that selection process. What the MSBA has is 8 pages of process documentation on how to go through this selection process, plus a 25-page template that is the request for services that we then fill in sections of. So what I try to do is pull out some of the high-level milestones in the selection process. So preparation through advertisement, and then the next slide is responses through final selection. So what they tell us to do is form an OPM selection committee, check the box. We've done that. One of the things we're hoping to do on tonight's meeting, which I think we already know the answer to, is identify our MCPPO procurement administrator, which I think is Mr. Gazinski. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. And then we prepare the request for services, the RFS. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But as that gets filled out, it includes things, just things about the statement of interest. So as a refresher, the district submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA. That was all of the documentation that talked about our facility challenges, our repairs for systems, our educational limitations based on the facility. It's basically the document that the MSBA reviewed and then came back to us and said, we'd like to invite you into the program. So that's called a statement of interest. That document gets attached to the RFS and then is also used to populate a whole lot of the RFS that we're going to complete, review multiple times, which I'll talk about, and then advertise. So once that request for services template is completed, then our OPM selection committee, which is a subset of this group, will submit the RFS to the entire school building committee. And then if we're all in alignment, school building committee votes to approve it to be advertised. So we draft it, we review it, SBC votes on it, and then MSBA votes on it. So, well, sorry, they don't vote on it. They need a 2-week window to review it and approve it in order to bless it to be advertised. So next step is to actually advertise the RFS, and I'll talk about that in the next slide a little bit more. We're basically putting it out on, well, actually, let me go down. Okay. In 2 slides, I have all the details about the advertisement, just so that everybody can understand what we have to do. This is probably sort of old hat for Mike, because it's in line with how all the other types of municipal RFSs are advertised. But once the school building committee reviews and approves it, MSBA gives it their review and sign off, then we go and we advertise it, and that's our mechanism to get people to see it and respond to it. So again, more details on advertisement coming, but it's at a high level, it's advertisement in the central register and also advertisement in at least 1 local paper. But like I said, there's a couple more details further down. So then once we've advertised it, then we will review the responses. For permanent building committee, this is probably very common for your group as well. So we review the responses. We can either predetermine a number that we want to shortlist, or we can determine the shortlist number based on how many responses that we get. We will invite the shortlisted companies to come and present to the OPM selection committee. Others are invited to attend those sessions as well, but the questioning, the evaluation, the ranking will be done by the OPM selection committee, and then that committee will bring recommendations back to the full SBC as far as who fell in line first, second, third, and so on, based on how many we decide to shortlist. Once the full committee votes on the preferred OPM provider, then there's paperwork upon paperwork here. We submit paperwork to the MSBA, and then on I think it's every other month, but there is a standing meeting with a regular cadence that the MSBA has OPM selection board meetings. And what they do in those is they review each OPM decision from all participating districts. And as at the district, we go to that meeting, we present who we selected and why. They have an opportunity to ask us questions. They discuss in front of us, but they discuss any questions, concerns, feedback about that particular OPM, and then they take a vote. And once they vote, then we're able to finalize the selection. And then our final step is to negotiate a contract. We also have contract templates to negotiate a contract with our first selection. If we're unsuccessful with our first selection, then we can move on to our second selection. So as far as what that process looks like, there are some additional details on upcoming slides, including some proposed next steps, a little bit more detail around the advertisement, around the content of the RFS itself. But before I get into those additional details, I'll pause here. From a high level, any questions that anyone has about kind of the high level milestones? I'll also talk about timing of the whole entire process as well. So I'll pause for a second and see if there's any questions so far.
I had a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rich.
No, you go. You spoke up first.
Mike, does this have to go in goods and services too? What's our advertising requirements on this, or is central register sufficient?
I believe the central register is sufficient, but we'll definitely double check that to make sure we dot all the I's and cross all the T's. And you know, it's a pretty straightforward process. The MSBA has dealt with it a lot, so we can certainly consult with them to confirm as well.
All right, thanks.
Denise, I
and
think you said
it-
one local paper.
Sorry, go ahead, Diane.
I think you said one local paper in addition to the Central Register.
Yep, so the MSBA has requirements within the process documentation, and it's the Central Register for a minimum of 2 weeks prior to the submission due date. They also have some recommendations, which I'll talk about in a second. And in addition to that, at least one local paper. So those are the two that are their requirements. So if there's anything in addition that we need to do as a municipality, but those are the minimum requirements as defined by the MSBA.
Denise, what is our ability to inform potential bidders that this is going to happen? I don't think, I mean, people in this business are looking at the register, I get it. But do we have
Yes.
any leeway in just encouraging people to please take a look at it?
We don't.
That's what I
So-
thought you were going to say, but.
Yeah, we unfortunately we don't. So we are, Central Register and the local paper advertising. Unfortunately, there's nothing else outlined as far as how we can communicate, notify, make aware other folks. I do know only because I had reached out to them to get some validation on some of the items during the lead up to the feasibility funding vote. I do know that, as an example, Compass Project Management, they're aware that we're in this process. So they know that that's happening. Yeah, and I certainly hope that they will that they will respond, but yeah, but we are a little limited in what we can do there.
I mean, it's just that the notion of a local paper advertisement just in and of itself is becoming an anachronism. I think we'll find one, but I don't mean to denigrate the Milford Daily News or the Metro West, but I mean, at some point, this is really going in the rearview mirror. And anyway,
Yep.
That's argument to the MSBA to say, hey, you know, how about some more electronic notification? But whatever.
I have one more question, Denise.
Could I ask my question first, Diane?
Yes,
Because I haven't
sure.
been able to ask it yet. On the negotiating with the first selection, since we don't have an OPM, what's our basis for negotiation? Does the MSBA give us a range of, hey, you guys should do, X percentage? Because I imagine that's how they do it. So how are we starting off with that? I mean, because like with architects, they would charge a percentage of the overall cost of the project. Is the OPM similar type of structure?
I'll have to check and see. I didn't look into the details about the negotiation. They give us a baseline contract because we'll sign up the architect at the front too. They're signing up for a bid on it, so it's not going to be a percentage of the total spend. So I'll have to get back to you on that one, Rich, because I didn't look into the details of the actual contract itself. But they give us the contract. So I'll check on that one and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Rich, in the past, I think I can answer. We've had the selected company give us their estimate of a price. And we've discussed that amongst the group at the time and made a decision about whether it was something we could negotiate or not.
Okay, that's great. I still would like to have some knowledge of what the going rate is because, I don't have a basis to say, is that a good number or a bad number? If I had some history or something else, then I'd be able to make a better determination of that.
My brain says 5%, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I have sort of guidelines broken down by discipline as far as the total project costs go. So I have that formula of like how much would be, allocated to project management and how much to architecture and all of that. The big question mark with all of that though is what's the total number? So I don't know, it's, if OPM fees are 10% or 5% of X, I don't really know what X is. And that's kind of, we won't get to that until we're into the feasibility study. So let me take a peek at the contracts that they provide. Let me see if I can dig into what we did with Clyde Brown, see if I can find anything for reference wise. I can't remember if we were sort of comparing proposals to one another relative to costs, right? So like 2 proposals came in at 200K and 1 came in at 400K. So I don't remember. So I'll do a little bit of digging and some research on that and come back to the group with an answer.
All right, great. Thank you.
Denise, I don't think we got into money until we selected our order.
That's correct.
Yeah. For example, for Clyde Brown, we selected Compass as our first company to negotiate with. And we didn't have to go further because we reached an agreement with them. And
Right,
that's price.
It's a qualifications-based procurement process. So yeah, you're totally right. You pick your favorite, and then if you can come to $1, you go forward. And if you can't come to $1, then you go to number 2. So yeah, it's
Right.
qualifications-based, and then price is secondary.
Right.
You can get them to do it for 200. That's good. That was your
Are
number.
there any,
Denise.
are there any zeros after the first?
Yeah.
two?
$200
Dollars,
an hour,
right?
maybe.
$200. There we go. We're good.
I have a quick question. What's the level of effort to the RFS, and do we have a feel for the timeline to do all these things? And the reason I ask is then, is there any artifacts from the Clyde Brown that are, relevant to be able to reuse or not here to help streamline this?
Yep. So we'll talk. We'll go into a little bit more detail about timeline in a minute. But timeline for us right now is really dictated by how quickly we want to move. So our only deadline. We are well ahead of our only deadline that we had currently, which was the end of March for feasibility funding approval. So since we have that secured, now we can move on to OPM. There are some events as part of the OPM process where there's required timeline, like the advertising is a perfect example. They want to make sure that there's 2 weeks of advertisement at a minimum. So ideally, we are selecting when we would like to have our target date for OPM selection complete, and then backing ourselves into all of the other milestones that lead up to that. So those are all outlined in the RFS itself, because we actually have to publish them. So we have to publish the due date for the proposals, and then the date of when presenters will be notified, and then the date of the presentations, and then when the selection will be complete, and then notification of preferred vendor. So those are all in there. One of the things I was hoping for us to get to tonight is, what do we want to target to be complete by, knowing that we have at least a month of advertisement. They say ideally 3 to 4 weeks. So putting in a buffer of a month, having us have some initial target for when to be complete by, because that'll help us back into some of those other dates. So that's the sort of high level on the timeline question. The other part of your question around effort. So the statement of interest that was used for the middle school, high school project will be probably the single artifact that helps to populate most of the RFS. So it gets attached in full, and then pieces and parts get pulled out of it to include in the RFS document. There's also a fair amount of just administrative information. Who's your MCPPO? Who's the contact for questions on the RFS? What's the timeline for submitting questions? Who do I direct it to, and who do I send the finished proposals to? So my initial thought, and totally open to ideas about this, my initial thought was that I'm happy to do it, or someone else can if they would like. My initial thought was to take a pass at completing all of the, what I would call low-hanging fruit, easily answered questions within the RFS, attaching the SOI, assigning, including portions of the SOI in the appropriate areas, and then distributing that to the OPM selection committee or calling out any other people that we might need for some specifics or to fill in the blanks of areas that we aren't able to easily complete based on the information that we have today. We went through a similar process with Clyde Brown, and we were able to complete it with a fairly light lift.
That sounds good. And we spoke earlier regarding this process and, being in construction. I like to push because, anything we can do at the beginning to get us moving, and in case we run into something or have some information that takes longer, I'd rather have more time on our end to do it and not have it be a crisis. So I would prefer to push, where we can. So this is one place that we can push on.
Yep, I agree.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Just a request. Since the SOI filing is critical to this whole exercise, can that document and all the related material be made available to everybody? So even if we're not on the selection committee, we're not going to be asking questions that we're already dealt with, and it'll help us to be more focused on what we're actually chasing. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, absolutely. Kim, do you have that already? Do you have the SOI and the supporting documents?
No, I don't.
Okay. We'll get you the SOI submission, and also
There was follow-up from the MSBA, right? So
Hesitation.
they asked for more stuff too, right?
Yes. So there are specific things that we've done so far. So statement of interest is one. Enrollment information is another. Capital planning and capital and facility planning is another. So what we can do, Kim, is it okay if we get you the submissions that we've made, and then if you can make those available to the group, would that work?
Absolutely, yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to be
Sure.
asking
Get that,
questions that are
Denise.
already settled, because that just wastes everybody's time.
Sure.
Denise, just a quick question to follow up on Jim's earlier question on the advertising. Is it possible, if there's somebody in particular or multiple people in particular who the town would be interested in and have worked with them before, is it ethical or unethical to actually just give them a phone call to make them aware that we're looking, we are advertising, to make sure that they actually see the advertisement?
So my initial reaction is there's nothing in the MSBA that says that we can do that. So I'd be apprehensive, but and I don't know if they
There's nothing
tend
that
to
says you can't either though, right?
right, but they tend to steer. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, if I can jump in the municipalities in which I've worked where, and I'm working on an RFS for OPM services right now. So in terms of the lift you talked about earlier, is there an artifact you can use? I'm using an old RFS, changing the scope and using 90% the same thing. So we don't need to be in the business of reinventing stuff outside and absent force. A lot of this is the same. So I would hope Clyde Brown can provide a really good template. In terms of reaching out to vendors, we as a municipality do that all the time. I don't, provide any information that isn't publicly available, but if I've worked with an OPM before and we have an RFS out for OPM services, I shoot my contact an email and say, just wanted to make sure you saw this, and just send them the advertisement. And we do that constantly. So if there is an OPM that the town has had success with, that is familiar with the town, that has provided, good and equitable services. From my perspective, there's nothing wrong with, from the town side saying, hey, wanted to make sure this didn't slip past you, and put the same, and then any follow-up questions that they have to be addressed through an addendum. You can't give them any information no one else did, but you want to make sure that you have the best pool of applicants available. And from my experience, there's nothing untoward or unethical about disseminating that information on a specific or targeted basis.
So Jeremy, just to make them aware of the fact that we're looking for somebody.
Exactly. You can't give them anything no one else has, but you can say, here, make sure you didn't miss this.
Yeah.
Terry?
I would fully
Yeah.
agree with that. I mean, my experience is the same. I am not aware of any law that prohibits the town from simply contacting vendors and letting them know that that you're going out to bid for it, and that that they have that opportunity. But yeah, you're right. You cannot provide them special information. You're not providing anyone else, but you can certainly let people know that this is out there, and they can decide whether or not to submit.
Yeah, and what I was going to add is I think it was 2 days after town meeting, the fall town meeting, I was at a statewide facilities conference, and I spoke to at least 20 vendors who are in this business. And I made them all aware that we had just passed funding for an SOI, and that sometime in the spring, they should be looking for us to be putting out the RFS for an OPM. And then sometime after that, I spoke to some architects who were also there saying, there'll become a point where we'll be looking obviously for an architect to be part of that process. So there is some awareness out there. And I will tell you just my own email stuff that comes in. Clearly there is an awareness that we're going to be in the midst of a building project, or hopefully in the midst of a building project.
Okay, so it sounds like based on everyone's experience that there is nothing wrong with us reaching out to OPMs that we've used in the past. So Jim, I apologize for my earlier answer. So sounds like if there are people that we want to make sure are aware that we are in this process, that we can reach out to them and let them know to keep an ear out on this.
And
look
what
up
I
for
would
the
say,
central
what I would say on that, Denise, to interrupt, is that that should go funneled through somebody. So it should either go to probably to Kim. If anyone is reaching out, hey, we reached out to Sammy Smith's OPM company. We should be aware of it as a committee. Also, it can't be just individuals shooting things out. So if you do reach out to somebody, make sure that the committee is aware of it, please.
Yeah, well, so it's this group right now. So while we have all of us, do we want to just make the list of who we would like to make aware of this, and just so that it's a one shot, like, let's figure the list out now, if Kim can reach out to them, and then we're done, just so then it takes it off the table for anybody reaching out individually to companies. For me, I would love to make sure that Compass is aware that we are going through this process.
I agree.
Okay.
Jeremy, you had someone that you had mentioned earlier?
Yeah, I've had two. So one is a large multinational. It depends what team you get, but I've had excellent success in my professional life with Skanska. And then on a smaller scale, two projects I'm working on now and have had really great success on a much smaller firm is Port Construction Consulting, PORT, out of, I think, Smithfield, Rhode Island, or Warwick, or I don't know. Rhode Island's so small, it's all next to each other. But Port Construction Consulting out of Rhode Island are the two that, I wouldn't unilaterally do anything. I push it through Rich and Kim, but those are the two that I would want to make sure from my network we're aware, because I think they provide a quality service and might miss the advertisement otherwise, and would want them to have a shot.
I would add, obviously, the endorsement of Compass, and I'm afraid to say that my age is getting to my memory, but the group that I worked with on the Southbridge Middle High School, that OPM was also excellent, and I will get back to the group, or get back to Kim within 24 hours with the name of that OPM, because I felt that they were really excellent on that project.
Okay, if anyone else has any other suggestions, send them off to Kim, and we can make sure that those people are aware also.
Excellent. Okay, any other questions before I pop back over to the slides, just for a couple of minutes or more, perhaps? Okay. Okay, so I think some of us we may have we have already hit, so it will likely be quick. All of these things are as directed by the MSBA. So as I mentioned earlier, the MSBA needs to review and sign off on the RFS. And they ask for a minimum of 2 weeks lead time prior to the publication date for them to receive it. So they have enough time to read and review and give us back their sign off to go forward with publication. We talked a bit already about the central register and the local newspaper advertising. They recommend advertise 3 to 4 weeks prior to the due date. So we have some flexibility there, just no less than 2 weeks prior to the due date. So just giving us some guidance on the actual advertising of the RFS. But that's what they require. And then for completing the RFS, the MSBA has the entire template. What we will be doing is filling in the blanks, and they make it nice and easy for us to do that. So there's tables in there that we'll fill out. We're going to cut and paste sections of the SOI right into the RFS. There's contact information. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm happy to take first swing at it, utilizing the SOI. I'm certain I will have some questions for you, Terry and Mark and Bob and Paul, I'm sure. And then once the initial draft is completed, I will, if there are gaps that I don't know where to go to get the information, or that just need a little bit more specificity, then Rich, I'll make sure that Rich and Steve, I'll make sure that you're both included along the way, but we might just need to pull in a few other people. So what else? So yeah, go ahead.
Is there an opportunity in any of this for the vendor to actually tell us in their own words why they think they're good for us, or is this so much, can't even do that?
So the request for services is basically our description of what we're looking for. Yeah. In response to that, they send us full proposals.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna get like hopefully a whole big stack of really big proposals that they're gonna submit, and we're gonna direct them through the RFS, like how many copies to give us, so that we make sure we have enough copies for people and all that. So yes, they're gonna give us a whole. I actually, I think just about 6 months ago, I think I finally threw out my final Clyde Brown RFS response from one of the vendors. So Steve, I'm guessing you probably still have some in your office. So we will get a big proposal back from each of them, and there'll be a window for them to ask questions. All of that is baked into like the dates within the RFS. So we'll have to give them a contact of who they can direct questions to. We'll have to review those questions, get them answers. We publish it so that regardless of who submits the question, all of the individuals are provided with the answer. So the process for all of that is outlined in the RFS. So we'll work our way through all of that. But yeah, we'll get nice big proposals from each of them.
Well,
so
big is not the same thing as something that's responsive to actually
that is very true.
having written many proposals in my career.
Yes.
So, okay, I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity for them to actually tell the story, not just respond to all the questions there.
Yes.
Do we have a scoring template that we use for Clyde Brown?
Sorry?
Do we have a scoring template that we use for the Clyde Brown project where we can actually score the responses that help determine maybe, our primary candidate at all? How do we evaluate or, measure each of these responses against each other? I mean, there's always subjectiveness.
Thanks to the MSBA, there is a scoring template.
Yeah, right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Sure thing. Don't thank me, thank them. They provide us with all sorts of wonderful tools to be able to make sure that we're fair and equitable throughout this process. So yes, there's a scoring template. What we did with Clyde Brown is we came up with a list of questions. So we met as a group, we decided the questions that we wanted to ask. Everybody had copies of those questions. We ensured that we stuck to all of those questions. So we asked everyone that came to present the exact same questions. So we sort of like stuck to the script, we kept the script, and made sure that we weren't unfairly requesting or receiving information. So we'll go through the same process here. So we'll have the predefined questions. We'll go through that at the close of the evening when they come and they actually do their presentations. We'll use the scoring sheet that's provided by the MSBA. So we'll have that already. We do have the opportunity to, based on the different subtopics of scoring, to determine what point numbers we want to give to each of the subtopics. So that part is flexible and up to us. It's consistent across how we're going to measure each and all of the folks that come to present, but the template itself is provided by the MSBA. All coming back from Clyde Brown. Okay. All right. So let's see. So good. Thank you all for the questions, because we are getting through some of these things that are on here. So let's
Martin,
go
does
ahead.
anybody have a sense of what the market's like? Because that, should we be leisurely here, or, there's a lot of people looking for work, or it's the market is really tight? What do you think?
I'm not sure on municipal specifically, but construction itself has slowed down quite a bit. My subs are telling me that, some are actually out looking for work versus, me having to chase them down. Plus with the rise in interest rates, that's the municipal projects take so long to do that, it may take them, 3 years to get up to the point where they're up and running and funded and all that stuff. So there is a slower cycle on that. But, I'm thinking in general, construction has slowed down a bit.
But the market here is for OPMs, not the building itself. I mean, I don't know what's going on
It would all
in
be the
terms of
same.
municipal building and that kind of stuff. Does anybody have any insight on that?
I think as one goes, they're all the same, Jim.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been the MSB has not stopped their process. So there's a lot of these OPMs that are in the school building business that, I think that's a good question to ask when the subcommittee is talking to a potential OPM, is how many projects do you have currently running and that type of thing. But they're in the business for this, some specifically just to do the OPM. Some of them are designed as OPMs and architects as well. So they're definitely busy right now.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, you'll see in their proposals a list of current projects and resources available as a result of those projects. So everything is pretty specific in what you'll see in their responses.
Yeah, but if I have a lot of work and I have a lot of work and on the horizon's a lot of work, I'm not even going to bid because I can't do the work. If I'm sitting around with nothing to do, I might be a little bit more aggressive. That's kind of what's the outline of the market. I don't think I want to be building a bridge right now.
No.
Because the federal government is pouring money into bridges. So I'm assuming that MSBA is still pouring money into schools, but enough. It's just about the marketplace. Because to me, if the marketplace tells you now that for getting an OPM, it makes sense for us to move with alacrity, particularly because I don't have to do the work, then we should. If it's not so urgent, if it takes another month, then fine.
I am fully in favor of getting the OPM on board as soon as we can, because then they're the experts at all of this. So, like I'm reading an MSBA website. I don't want to give wrong information, but they're really the experts. So for us to start the process, I would love for us to get them on board kind of as soon as we can and for us to get rolling. Let's see. Okay, so these are components of the RFS, many of which I've already touched on. As I mentioned earlier, I will take a swing through, fill out, and then reach out to folks for assistance as necessary. There were a couple of things. There was one document that was new as far as the process goes that we didn't bump into with Clyde Brown. They do have a required certifications document to get filled out. So So Mike, the MSBA has some, but then they also say, you might want to check with town council to see if there are any other certifications that we want to require as necessary for anyone that's bidding on it. So just a heads up, I will likely be reaching out for some assistance on that one. And then that's kind of a lot about just kind of the body of the RFS. And then, I have a blank bullet. And then I put in here just to sort of get us started a little bit, just next steps. I mentioned it at the very beginning. If might be a good discussion for us to have for an initial target date for when we would kind of like to be OPM selected, and then we can back in a bit, or we can flip it on its head and say, okay, how much time do we think it's going to take us to complete the RFS, and then add that way. The RFS has dates within it. I'm happy to take a first pass and then pass it through send it over to the OPM selection committee. And I don't know, Rich, if we would want to have a meeting of that group and maybe step through kind of dates and what we're thinking about to approach it from that perspective. But
yeah, I think
up
that
to
makes
you.
sense. I think that makes sense to figure out, timing wise, and then we may also want some feedback on, because we're gonna have to time it for a town meeting eventually. So we may want to think of that and, which one we want to go for and how do we get to that point?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. If you start at whenever the town meeting's going to be, what's that drive us for some of these timelines, right? It would seem OPM almost needs to be right away, because don't we ultimately need a cost estimate for town meeting? Isn't that what we need by May, or no?
Yeah, I don't think we'd ever make May town meeting.
Okay.
It's gonna be,
So
that would be fall.
the good news, I guess, sorry, the good news, I guess, is that typically a feasibility study time period will last anywhere between 20 and 24 months. So we don't, so we have a bit of time before we need to figure out which town meeting that
Okay.
we'll bring the big dollar amount to for approval. So that's the good news. OPM right now, we're really the drivers of our timeline right now. So it's how quickly we want to move to get these items completed in order to get the OPM on board. So we can kind of throw a stake in the ground and say, like, maybe we target RFS complete in 2 weeks, and that would include all of the follow-on dates for advertising and site walkthrough and questions and all of that. So there's some coordination that's around that, but I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that, 2 weeks from now, we have all the dates outlined and the RFS draft complete based on what it takes to get it together. It's not that, like I said, the MSBA is wonderful in that, they very much make it a fill in the blank and use the tools that you've already submitted to them as source materials to do that. So if we want to start there, we could start and say, maybe in 2 weeks we do an OPM selection meeting if we want to schedule that, and then we can review the draft at that meeting. And leading up to that, there'll be a bunch of discussion just on confirming dates. Because there's
That sounds good.
coordination with
Let me just check my calendar on that. Hold on.
That's February 1st.
February 1st. What do I have? Nothing. Wednesday. That works with me. Does that work for the group?
I guess I should
Mhm.
check. Let's see, February 1st. I'm totally.
That
fine
works
with
for me.
Yep.
Denise, I know I'm the kind of new guy to Millis, but having been through, this will be my third project. The quicker you can get your OPM selected, the better.
Yeah.
And get it, obviously, because the OPM, the MSBA has their dates, and you have to adhere to their board meetings, and they're going to help you select an OPM
Mhm.
for that. And then you know, they're going to start that feasibility as quickly as possible. So I think from my experience, the quicker you can get that selected in a positive way, the better for the project.
I totally echo Paul's comments, also as the new guy to Millis, but having experience with MSBA, getting OPM on board and having them help shepherd this project through and be the subject matter experts is the most imperative.
So based on your guys' experience, what's the fastest we could do this?
I think I think Denise's 2-week time frame probably is good. I mean, obviously MSBA might send some things back that you'd have to take a look at in the RFS, but they're usually pretty good at doing that fairly quickly. What's nice about the OPM is, and Mark and I, you know, you start talking about people coming to do, you know, site-based tests and those kind of things. We can start talking to staff about people being in the building and, you know, the project starting to move forward in that way. So that's helpful. But I think the 2-week turnaround is good unless MSBA has some additional requirements.
But that's for the RFS, right? And then you got to go out and go through the selection. So back to the first bullet of target the OPM date, when, you know, what's the soonest do we think that process would take in order to put a date on? Is that 2 months from now? Is it 3 months from now? That's what I'm trying to back into here is, you know.
I think it slides into the MSBA's board selection availability, like what those dates are, Denise, around when the MSBA will do their OPM board selections. So if you're 2-week RFS, you got a certain amount of time frame on the return of bids for the you know, for the OPM, and then your opportunity, the subcommittee's opportunity to meet with those people, ask those questions. And that, you know, so it is a turnaround. So like, that's why I was saying that I think the best idea is to do it get the RFS done as quickly as possible, because it is.
And Jim, to your answer is that we're not going to give you an answer right now of when the end date is, because we need to get some information. So, you know,
That's fine.
we got the concept good in it's, but it's not just a simple answer. I think we got to dig into it a little bit.
And I respect what Paul is offering. I would suggest that a longer advertising period, even a week longer, is going to give you a greater response. And I think it's always better to get, you know, more folks to test against, even if you have a favorite, quite frankly, so that you have a good pool to look at and a good pool to interview.
Yeah, definitely. A week doesn't make a ton of difference in our timeline in terms of evaluating, but it may make a large difference in terms of what someone's able to put together for a proposal. So yeah, totally agree, Terry.
Well, does the RFS set out a timetable for selection so that the vendors know when you're going to decide and all that kind of stuff? Or
We get
Yes.
to set it.
yeah,
Yep.
so we'll
Yep.
have the end date as part of that, at least in terms of selection.
Yep.
So-
By the time we have the draft of the RFS, we'll have that'll have all of the dates within it. Yep. We'll know the timeline once we get to
Right. Assuming
final
we
version of
get-
RFS.
And then we're a little bit subject to the MSBA board there, but
Correct.
hopefully they're not going to drag their feet for months. We might miss a week. One of the meetings, get on the next one. So
Is there a particular definition of a local newspaper?
yeah,
There's not. Last time we advertised in Milford Daily News. We could also put it in Metro West if we want, but no, they don't. The local newspaper is as far as they take it.
Mike, do you have the ability to put it on the town's website?
Absolutely, we could do that.
Yeah, because we
Once it's
can do that
complete.
because we can do it on the school's website as well. So
Yeah.
those are
I
two
would
other.
recommend that. Because
those
if
are-
someone hears that, oh, there's something going on in Millis, the quickest
Yep.
thing for them to do is go on the town's website and see if it's listed there.
Exactly. So that's another avenue of advertising it.
Good idea, Terry.
So that was all I had for tonight.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much for that. So I think we've identified our next steps, and we'll have to gather back together and work on the next step. So the next item on our agenda is for the Permanent Building Committee. let's see, Kim, should we review and approve the prior meeting minutes since the
Yeah,
gang
if we
was
can
here?
just do the school building minutes, and then we can do the permanent building committee minutes at the end, at the very end, if we want.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
those minutes were from Wednesday, December 7th was the
Yeah.
last meeting.
All right, I make a motion to accept the,
Rich? I have a change.
go ahead.
Yeah, it says I was there.
Yes.
I'm happy to report I was in Bermuda. I'm not there.
Okay,
I was just gonna make that motion. I make a motion that we approve the minutes of Wednesday, December 5th for the school building committee with the change that that Mr. McCaffrey was not present.
Thank you.
good news is you didn't vote in your absence.
I watched every minute of it until I got back.
Second, I'll
All
second
right.
the motion.
Thank
Great.
you.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 All right, great. Well, thank you, School Building Committee. We're gonna jump on to the Permanent Building Committee. So I know that you'd probably be enthralled to sit through our meeting, but you're more than welcome to leave.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Good night,
you.
Good night.
Go Bruins.
All right, so the next item on our agenda is, is to talk about the Lansing Millis repairs and stabilization. So Diane did a little bit of research and found out that the money for that that project hasn't been certified yet. John also did us a favor and ran out and took an initial assessment of the building. Roof, gutter, trim on it, because the goal on this is to stabilize the building. So most important thing is to take care of the roof. We've got to patch the holes that we have and, try to secure the building. The DPW and actually Karen Beret had reached out. I guess, Mike, they said you guys are gonna put a fence up around the property possibly?
That's correct. We are looking at putting a fence around the property as well as taking down the fire escape on the second floor, which is not in great shape and has become an attractive nuisance. Some local teenagers have decided it's a good spot to throw glass bottles from. And we've had to go over there a couple times sweeping up glass. So we do plan on doing both of those things in the near term. Just to touch briefly on the funding as well. I know we talked about the $250,000. That was through a government bond bill and not an earmark. So there's a longer time frame to access those funds. We are in close discussion with our legislative delegation, the majority of which is a little green. We have 2 new state reps, but I will be in touch with them, and I've been in touch with the senator's office to help guide those funds here as quickly as possible. But I just want to manage expectations here that it may be a little longer than usual than we usually access our earmark funds.
Well, the good news is that we're a little slow, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I will definitely keep the PBC abreast of where those funds are in the process, and I hopefully will have some more information by your next meeting, and I'll keep working on that.
Great. And before you jump off, so I had one thought, and just throwing it out there. One thought on that building is it would be nice if we were able to use it in some way, shape, or form. So one thought I had is, why couldn't it be used for storage for school, DPW, Council on Aging? We wouldn't necessarily be using it as occupied space, but we could heat it, we could alarm it. People would be going in and out of it. It would be a use for the building. And like I said, I'm just throwing it out there knowing that, storage space is always something that people could use. And like I said, it would give it traffic where, the kids may not be in and out because, vehicles are going in and out, the DPW, the janitors are down there, whatever. It's so just a thought of, maybe one use possibly that we don't have to get into elevators and, a whole bunch of specific requirements for ADA. And we'd only have to do a minimal, upgrade inside. So.
It's certainly worth investigating, you know, for some storage, whether that be cold storage or heated storage. And I do agree, if we were to do that, depending on the documents we kept there, we probably would want some alarms and so forth to make sure, to beef up the security a bit. But
Well, just knowing with the school project coming up, I mean, we may have a need for storage that if we could provide that ourselves, you know, we could use the building, even if we had to, you know, put an air furnace in it and have it, you know, minimally heated. It's just something to use the building. So we, you know, wouldn't be just sitting there. So.
that's a great point. It would be better than having 4 or 5 rented trailers to store things.
Okay.
Rich,
All right.
can I-
Just something.
Can I ask, kind of maybe you can back up a second, because, you know, numbers are flying all over the place here, and they were flying all over the place last year. We were talking $1 million, $1.5 million, $3 million, 275 to stabilize the building. How are we coming out with, okay, it's 200 and we think we can get the money?
Well, we did get a government bond bill approved of 250,000. That wasn't like a specific number we gave them. That's what we received. I believe that the Permanent Building Committee estimated somewhere between 350 to 400,000 to do.
You believe correctly.
Yes, to seal up that building, the envelope, to at least be able to keep the deterioration from continuing. And certainly, we probably want to have some discussions about, you know, in addition to the 250,000, of some additional funds, either from CPC or from, you know, free cash to be made available to, you know, do that full job to secure it. And then it could be used, you know, at least in the short term as storage and so forth.
Well, yeah, okay, so the job is 375, and we're talking about, assuming that's the right number, we're talking about various ways to fund it. And you'll recall when we went to CPC, they said, well, you know, we might be interested in helping you guys, but we're not gonna pay for all of it. So
The overall price, Jim, for the major renovation, you know, that was historical renovation. And
yeah, that one we're not gonna do, I guess.
Yeah. It would be great in a perfect world, but I did not win the Mega Millions for 1 point something billion, so that's not going to happen. I think, you know, we need.
So you mean you didn't win it? You're not going to build a senior center, and you're not going to fix Lansing Mills either.
No.
Okay.
No. So we need to. I think what we need to do on that is we'll have to, you know, set our expectations. You know, see what we can do, get some real pricing in. And then alternatively, like I said, if we can present another alternative to the town meeting, hey, we're fixing this thing up, but we're getting some use out of it, it may make the pill a little easier to take.
No, I think this is a good strategy. I just was wondering how we got from A to B. Now I understand.
That's government. All right, so our next thing is, as a committee, we'll, excuse me, we'll put together, John sent me a detailed list of what we need to do. We'll put that more together into, we'll have to put a request for services together for that. We'll get that together. We'll send that to you, Mike, so you can send that out to the central registry. We can get some numbers back on that, look at it. In the meantime, you know, maybe if there's some progress on, hey, while we're there doing other things, you know, we could get some thought process on what we might need to do. I'll probably have to talk to the building commissioner and say, hey, if we wanted to use that for storage or something of that sort, what will your requirements be? You know, so at least we know what we're getting into. The DPW did talk to me about the fire escape. I think they were waiting for permission from the fire chief to take that down. I told them it made most sense, take it down, bring it over to the DPW, let's save it, because we can reuse it. We do it all the time in Boston where we take old fire escapes and they weld them back together again, paint them black and put them back up. So we could save it in case in the future we need it. You know, down the road, we decide we're not going to need it, they can always chuck it, but, you know, we can have it saved down at the DPW, and that will keep the kids away. So, all right, great.
Just to quickly, I did speak with the chair of the select board, Erin Underhill. She had planned to be here this evening, but she had a urgent family issue that came up. So she sends her regrets, and she plans on being at your next meeting. So I just want to let you know that.
All right, sounds good. All right, I think that was it for me. Did anyone else have any thoughts?
Just, I just like to get the PVC minutes approved before the end too.
I was gonna do that next. You
Okay,
were-
just making sure you weren't
you're reading
signing
my
off,
mind.
Rich.
I wasn't getting ready for that. Hey, and I caught the fact that Jim wasn't there at the last meeting, so.
Yeah.
I move we accept the minutes for the November meeting, because I was there.
Because you were there.
I'm going to abstain from that because I was not there.
Yeah, I make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes from December 7th, permanent
That's
building.
November 29th.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry. Oh, I have the wrong one. November 29th, permanent building committee.
Second,
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, great.
Aye.
All right, good. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. And I make a motion to adjourn.
second.
All right, all in favor. You know, the only thing we didn't do we have another meeting set, Kim?
Well, I wasn't, so you just did this, the school building, the OPM selection committee, but we didn't select an actual meeting now for either.
Well, well, for the PVC, figure that we wanted the other one done in two, well, we picked the first.
We
for
picked the first for the smaller OPM selection committee, yes.
Yeah, so let's see, in February. Hold on. Tuesdays are not good for me. Wednesday, how about either the 8th, the 15th? Any of those dates good for anybody?
8th is okay.
8th is better for me than the 15th.
8th sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right, so we'll set it for 8 and the 8th of February, and 7:30 works good for me if that's okay with everybody, because that allows me to eat dinner, which makes me less grumpy. So, all right, great. And with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night.
Right on.
Right.
Good night.